Involved. He has been involved in the implementation of large regulatory changes in the financial services industry and statutory reporting across a broad range of financial entities. He co-authored his first book in 2020, and it was titled The Making of Nigeria, From Jihad to Amalgamation. The Making of Nigeria, From Jihad to Amalgamation, which tracks the unlikely series of events and characters that put Nigeria together through the 19th century. He has also written a long-running blog on the Nigerian socio-economic issues, and he has featured on the BBC, The Guardian Nigeria, Quartz Africa, and various other publications. And he presently lives in Hertfordshire in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me Feyi Fawehinmi. Feyi Fawehinmi. Feyi, you are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Pastor. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be on this platform today. Hopefully we can bounce some ideas around and learn from each other today. Thank you.
Indeed. You did write the book, or you co-authored the book, The Making of Nigeria, From Jihad to Amalgamation, and that is your chosen topic for today. So I have one question for you as we kick off. What made you write that book, or how did you get involved in a book such as that, The Making of Nigeria, From Jihad to Amalgamation?
Okay, so my co-author and I, Fola Fagule, he's also a banker. We got to know each other as you get to know people these days on social media, and we became friends. You know, we got close, and in the course of being friends, I realized that he was someone who had invested quite a bit in terms of time and money as well in trying to understand Nigeria's history. So in terms of collecting books, collecting bits of Nigerian history. I also have an interest in Nigerian history as well, and I've been writing publicly for a while. So we got to a point where we thought, maybe we can add some value in terms of illuminating the past for the current generation. And there are various parts of Nigerian history that are not well known. Some parts are better known than others. So anything after independence is generally fairly well known. But the 19th century, that period before the Europeans came and colonized us, wasn't very well known. So we thought we could add some value. And there's a famous saying that history is too important to be left to historians alone. So we are not historians, we're just storytellers, and we rely on the work of actual real historians. So we thought we could refresh these stories, because we have in Nigeria, we have a demand and supply problem when it comes to our history. So we thought we could maybe just contribute a bit towards the supply side, and hopefully the demand side. There's a groundswell lately for people want to understand, people want to know about Nigeria's past, which is why we are doing things like this today and various other ways as well. So we thought, we could have a go at it, write something, and there was enough material for us, and we chose that period where we thought that we could shine a light on Nigeria's past before the well-known parts. Yeah.
Okay, so where did you get most of your material from, and how long did it take you to write this book, and would you consider it exhaustive, or is just a beginning?
So to start off with the last question, it's definitely just the beginning. It took us, because it was two people, which is one of the advantages of writing with a co-author, we were able to wrap most of it up in about 2 years. So the writing part it's fairly, anyone who's written the book or something will probably know that the writing part is probably the easiest part. You can write a chapter in a day even, but the actual research and gaining of the knowledge, that took quite a while. And Nigeria's history, it is there, but it's scattered. It's not in one place, and it's often very hard to access. So there are books, for example, on Nigeria's history, which you will not find on Amazon, or even if you find them publicly, they're so expensive to buy. A lot of books, for example, they're only copies in the British Library. So I guess for living in Nigeria and I living in the UK, it helped us in a bit. So I was able to spend some time in the British Library accessing old books that are out of print. So many Nigerian books that were written before the 1960s. You can't find them anywhere anymore. And then loads and loads of papers. So journal papers on JSTOR, on the internet, everything. So, I guess two people doing it made it kind of a lot easier. We were able to concentrate on different parts and bounce off ideas each other, edit each other's work as well. Yeah.
So what's the size of the book? How many pages is it? And what are you going to do after this? And how has the public received the book? I think I have a copy of this book. Somebody gave it to me. I cannot say that I have read it. I'm sorry. I do apologize. But how many pages is it? And what are you going to do after this?
So it comes in under 400 pages, about 350 pages thereabouts when you include everything. After this, so our story stops around, so the amalgamation happened in 1914, and then the world, just as immediately after the amalgamation, then the First World War broke out. So we sort of end it around about towards the end of the First World War. So we think we might be able to take the story from amalgamation all the way to the end of the Civil War for another volume. So maybe we'll see. But there are many stories to be told about Nigeria's past. Yeah.
That's very, very good. And how has the public received this book? And has it been formally launched? And where is it available for those who are on the platform who might want to get it?
Okay, yeah, it was. So we tried to launch it in Nigeria first. So we launched it came out to Nigeria first in October last year, and then it's now available everywhere. So the final market he opened up to was last month in the North American market, so the US and Canada. So it's available pretty much every bookshop online, Amazon. In Nigeria, most bookshops have it as well, or online from either the publisher, Cassava Republic, or a bookstop like Roving Heights. So the reception has been quite good. People have liked it. I think the key thing for us, like I said earlier, is we want it to be the starting point. So we want it to be after you read Formation, you are more curious about Nigeria's past, and we link to quite a number of the materials we use. The bibliography is quite probably, I wouldn't say exhaustive, but pretty decent sized bibliography. So we hope that our attempt will be a starting point for people to say, okay, this country's history is a lot more interesting than I thought it was, and a lot of things happened in the 19th century in particular that helped to form the fundamental character of Nigeria as we know it today. So
I think maybe if you consider putting it into some kind of documentary or TV series or something, so that again it might be able to come alive and give some meaning. But regardless, you live in the UK, so you probably did this book part-time. Okay. May I ask why you are living in the UK?
Well, it's a good question. I'm not sure it has a good answer. I left Nigeria in 2004. I moved out here, so my family were already here. It was just something that everyone, my mom moved back. So my mom used to be in the Air Force. When she retired, we decided for her to come over here. My sister was already living here. My younger brother was already living here. So as soon as I finished university, I left and joined them. And I thought I would come back not long after, but I guess the country has sucked me in. So here I am. I've built a career here. I've got a family here as well. So that's the why. I don't know. Maybe the easiest answer is probably to say I'm an economic migrant, like many millions of other Nigerians across the world.
So from where you stand and where you are, what's your opinion of Nigeria and what is happening in Nigeria? What sort of news do you get, and how does it affect you or involve you? I'm sure somebody has seen you write this book and so on and so forth. Must be a lot of comments and contributions and people saying this and people saying that. So what's your own perception of Nigeria from where you stand?
Well, I mean, I'm very close to Nigeria. I have a lot of friends in Nigeria. I talk to people in Nigeria every day, So I mean, like everyone else, I'm in like loads of different WhatsApp groups about Nigeria, and I have to say that this moment in time, it bothers me quite a lot. I'll probably say I'm a fairly optimistic person. I generally, I generally try to see the bright side in things, but I think we're going through a very, very rough moment as a country, and it is pretty dangerous. We're in dangerous times, and I will say that in my adult life, I'll probably say this is one of my most pessimistic times about the country because there are things threatening to rip the country asunder, and I am not sure that we have a pool of leadership that is ready to rise to the occasion. One thing, one of the things we talk about in formation is that when you go through the book, you see that as much as there was internal politics and internal factors affecting the shape and character of the country, Nigeria has always been a country whereby external forces always have an influence. So you think about something like slavery, for example. The slave trade was a core part of Nigeria's of Nigeria. I mean, the first slaves from Africa were taken in 1444 to Portugal, and then that trade continued for a good 400 years plus after that. Now, that shaped the internal character of Nigeria. A whole elite came to see it as a normal way of life for them. Everyone, it was so normal. But then when the final call for slavery came, it didn't come from inside of Nigeria. It came from abroad. It came from people like Wilberforce who were campaigning, the abolitionist movement who were campaigning across the Western world. But the effect of that impacted Nigeria very, very hard. So things have always happened in Nigeria outside of the country, and then the effect hit the country. The Industrial Revolution was another one. We felt the impact. And something like that is happening now. So when you take, quite apart from all the challenges we're facing internally as a country, we have all the ethnic clashes, religious clashes, all of that. We are also seeing, a coming to the end of the oil era. It is happening, and this Nigeria being a country that has been shaped by oil for its modern history, the end of oil is going to have a profound influence on the country, and it's happening faster than I expected. You see, when you open the papers every day now, you see stories about how some activist investors are trying to stop big oil companies from putting any money at all in oil exploration, or you see things like things that looked a bit crazy like 10, 20 years ago when you had all the green environmentalists or climate change activists. These things are not crazy anymore. They are normal. You see them in respectable places, in board positions, in investor positions. So all of these things are happening. And Nigeria is facing these two forces, almost kind of like a pincer movement, where you have forces internally, crisis internally, economic crisis, religious crisis, ethnic crisis happening internally, a failure of leadership. And then you have the external crisis, the external factors, things like, coming to the end of oil, which will completely disturb Nigeria's economic model as we know it today. Most Nigerians obviously don't have any connection or business with oil, but the elite that we've built, we've developed an elite who are not yet ready for the end of oil. They are not preparing for it. It's the same way slavery. When slavery was coming to an end, we had a lot of elites who just could not countenance the fact that this business was over. They couldn't deal with it. And, they fought to continue it. They tried it illegally, tried everything until it was almost taken away from them by force. So I think a combination of these factors, these external factors that are happening and impacting Nigeria, and also the internal factors, they make me quite worried in a way that I don't think I've ever been this worried and about Nigeria's future in my adult life. Yeah.
So what do you then think the average Nigerian should do? This pincer movement that you have described, a very, very tough economy, you called it the failure of leadership, rather restless and seemingly lack of direction. And at the same time, our economic dependency an economic base, the source of our revenue, or at least foreign exchange, which brings in most of what we consume, is being eroded at a critical speed. So what should the average Nigerian do at this time? What do you think?
Okay, I think one of the biggest problems right now is that, as I keep telling people now, that Nigeria is running out of people who believe in Nigeria. So, and this is the idea of Nigeria. So Nigeria as one country. People who believe in that we are running out of them at an alarming speed. The secessionist talk is everywhere. I mean, some family WhatsApp groups, and people are talking about these things openly. People are talking about breaking up the country openly. And I will say that I think that the first thing is that personally, breaking up Nigeria would not be my option. But it's not popular. It doesn't seem to be a popular view these days. But I'll say that the first thing would be to have a level of belief in Nigeria. Now, I don't really care about what is under the ground. For me, the Nigeria strength is its human capital. If we can maximize Nigeria's human capital, not even maximize, even if we can get 50% out of our human capital, then nothing will stop us. All will end. The transition might be painful, but we will move away. There is no limit to human ingenuity. And Nigerians are energetic people. We have a lot of energy and drive, and we're talented in many ways. So I think the first thing I will say is that if you can muster it within yourself as an average Nigerian, especially as somebody who is either a member of the elite or something, if you can muster within yourself to actually believe in the country, I think that's the fundamental step. If you can believe in the country, believe in Nigeria, that the country can get past its challenges and that things can get better, I think that you will begin to see the country in a different way. So I think that's the first challenge. If people can believe in the country, without that, then I mean, if people are already thinking in ethnic mindsets that we'll be better off if the South breaks off from the North, or if the Southwest goes on its own, or the Southeast goes on its own, or South, North, everybody. If people are already in that mindset, it is very, very difficult to say anything, in terms of the fact that, oh, okay, maybe the economy might get better or something. It's become an identity question, and they are resigning from the future of Nigeria. So they look at the future, and once people don't have any faith or belief in the future of the country, they don't feel like they have to do anything to fix anything. So if anything is wrong with Nigeria, for example, people then don't feel like, if you've resigned from the future of the country, you don't feel like you need to do anything or contribute anything to make it better. You are thinking in a completely different way. So I think my first thing would be that for anyone who still believes that maybe Nigeria has some potential, has something in it that has not yet been unlocked or tapped into, that might make the country better, if not for us, but for our children's generation. My first thing would be that if you can find it within yourself, as difficult as it is, don't stop believing that this country might be better.
Thank you. So the making of Nigeria, from Jihad to Amalgamation. Why did you start from Jihad, and how has this history, how has it led to where Nigeria is, and what are the key points that you want us to take away from this?
Okay, so I think one of the things that we'll say, so if we go just before the Jihad, we have an idea of what the place that we call Nigeria today, we have an idea of what it looked like at that point. It was quite atomized, so different communities stay in their own lane. Everybody had their lots, if you like. There are different communities, and there were hundreds of all these different communities. Now, the river was also a defining feature. So the River Niger has defined Nigeria a lot more than many Nigerians care to know or actually pay attention to. So all of that was happening. Now, the reason why we picked the Jihad was because the Jihad was a consolidation exercise, right? So in terms of the fact that it was the first attempt, a large-scale attempt at consolidating a huge part of what we know as Nigeria's territory today. So before that, everyone stayed in their lane, everyone stayed in their community, and they traded with each other on, arm's length terms. But what the jihad did was that it began in Sokoto, and then it spread out to everywhere in what we know as northern Nigeria today. So the caliphate that Danfodio and his successors built it took Sokoto as the head of the headquarters of the caliphate, if you like. But the jihad, there were emirates that paid tribute to Sokoto, and were, there were states of Sokoto, across all of northern Nigeria, all the way to Adamawa, down to Nupe. So that exercise, at the end of the jihad, it created the largest state in sub-Saharan Africa at that point in time. So it had the largest bureaucracy in sub-Saharan Africa. And the people who designed it, they designed it based on the Abbasid Caliphates of 1,000 years before in Iraq. So they built an actual state, a functioning state, even though obviously it was tearing at the seams, and it was very weak in different parts. But so that consolidation attempt, that effect of pulling together a huge part of what we know as Nigeria today, from west, starting in Sokoto in the west, all the way to the east, and down to the banks of the Niger in the Nupe country, was why we took that jihad as the starting point. And then the British then came by joining all the other parts together, and then the British, taking us to amalgamation, where the map of what we know as Nigeria today was put around the country by the British.
Okay, so what do you think the motivation for the jihad was? Was it to consolidate a state, or was it religious evangelism, or was it premeditated? And why did they stop at the banks of the Niger or the Nupe? Or was that the first round, and was a second round being considered, and so on and so forth?
Okay, yeah. So it's I think the jihad it began with Usman Danfodio. So he was let me just go back. So he was born in what we know as Sokoto today, just close to the border of the Nigerian Republic. But his family migrated to Sokoto from the Western Africa, where the Fulanis tended to migrate from. Now, today we all think of Fulani as one thing, but back then there were two types of Fulani, if you like. So there were the settler Fulani, and then there were the pastoral Fulani. So the settler Fulani will come. They were elite. They embraced education. They were very, very worldly. They had networks that connected them to different parts of the world. They knew what was going on, and they were very, very scholarly. So whenever they settled in a town, usually on the outskirts of the town, it didn't take long for them to become close to the ruling elites, because the ruling elites will like them and say, oh, these are people who are educated. So, okay, come into my court. So Danfodio's clan was one of those. They settled outside of that, and they generally advised the ruling elite. Now, the pastoral Fulani were the headers who moved around. Now, the main difference between them was that the pastoral Fulani they didn't intermarry, they didn't speak the language, they didn't really like the settler Fulanis. Both of them didn't really like it. The settler Fulanis will marry locally. They adopted the customs of the local people. They adopted the Hausa language and all that. But the pastoral Fulanis will basically move from one place to another with their cattle, and they disliked the settler Fulani because they felt that the settler Fulani they sold out, if you like, by intermarrying. So Danfodio was a settler Fulani, as we know, and then he got close to the ruling elite. But the problem was something that has remained with Nigeria today: injustice, unresolved injustice. It is always, because it is always there, a charismatic preacher who rose up. He quickly built up a following by telling people that, look, all of these things we can actually under Islam we can get rid of a lot of all these things. And some of the things he complained about will be very, very familiar to any Nigerian today. Things like you have your cattle, somebody a rich man comes and says your cattle has done something to him, and then he seizes your property, or arbitrary taxes, rich people taking the property of poor people, no access to justice. A poor man will commit a crime. The law says that the penalty for that crime is death. So the poor man commits the crime and then he's killed, he's executed. A rich man commits the exact same crime, and all of a sudden he's able to pay a fine and escape. So these injustices were building up there, and a lot of people who started to listen to Danfodio and what he was saying, they were not even Muslims. They did not even, they just liked the idea of what he was saying, that, okay, this man is addressing a lot of the problems that are facing us, and obviously, and slavery as well. There's some local people, again, we see that problem today. Some ordinary people will not be able to get a wife, but a rich man, will have 1,000 women, and these things were, these injustices were boiling and building up until eventually it blew up. So Danfodio himself, he started off initially saying we use persuasion, conciliation. Like, look, he kept on preaching at the leadership that you must stop your idolatry, you must stop your paganism, adopt Islam properly, get rid of all of these injustices. But over time, he himself became more and more radical. And then we eventually, to the point where there was one trigger where the king, so some of the leadership in Gobir, where they started, they had tried to, they had seen the problems that were happening, and they thought, okay, how do we get rid of this? They started coming up with various laws to try and, stop Danfodio's movement or stop his followership from growing. Things like saying you could only become a Muslim if your father was also a Muslim. So they were basically trying to break the chain of conversion for people converting to that. They banned Muslim dresses and all those kind of things. But eventually, this thing blew up into a conflagration, and a fight started. And it started off in Sokoto, but before you knew what was happening, so many other people across northern Nigeria took the opportunity of the general chaos and the general fighting to pick up arms where they were and to start their own fight based on their own local injustices. And we can see examples of that today, whereby you can look at something like the NSAS protest that happened in October last year. We can see how an injustice that began in one part of the country quickly spread to different parts of the country in different ways. So, an example I used was, I tell people, was that when the NSAS protest was going on, there was also an additional process in Ogun State. But these people's own problem was not actually SARS. Their problem was customs officers who always claim to be chasing rice smugglers. And in the process, these people, over many years, customs officials chasing rice smugglers will kill local people with stray bullets. And this had been going on for so long. The local leaders in that place have been complaining about it, that either the customs officers will shoot people indiscriminately or kill them while they were chasing people. And so many school children have been killed in this way. So when the NSAS protest began, they modified it in their own place. The protest also began there, but their own was against customs. So we see different things there. And I guess that maybe this is one of the reasons why we should be wary about a breakdown in law and order. Nigeria's history tells us something. There's injustice everywhere. So if there's a breakdown in law and order in one place, it will spread for various reasons, and you might not be able to control it in a way that you think you can. So this is what happened with the Jihad. So this is what happened with the Jihad, whereby it began in Sokoto, quite localized, but then as the war broke out and people knew that there was a Jihad that had kicked off in Sokoto, they picked up arms in Kebbi, in Bauchi, in different places, and began their own Jihad as well. And before you know what was happening, northern Nigeria, as we know it today, was razed to the ground. It was the war completely destroyed northern Nigeria as we know it today.
It was destroyed, and then there was now a process of rebuilding.
Yeah. So that rebuilding, for example, Katsina was actually a much bigger city than Kano. It was the war that destroyed Katsina, destroyed both of them, but then gave Kano the upper hand in terms of the whole rebuilding. So there was a rebuilding in terms of a new state was built, and emirates were across the whole northern country, and they reported to to Sokoto. They paid tribute to Sokoto as well.
Well, like you said, some of these things were sporadic and started from place to place, why did they pay tribute to Sokoto? And my question is, was it pre-planned and premeditated, or was it just a crisis that happened? Really, was your research able to tell us really about this?
So this is an interesting question. This is an interesting debate that has been raging for 2 centuries since it happened. One thing that happened was that, so we can take clues. All the people who led jihad across northern Nigeria and who led jihad in different places, all of them were Fulani, with the exception of one, the guy who led the jihad in Bauchi. He wasn't a Fulani. So that was one clue. Now, a lot of them were Danfodio students. So over time, before the jihad had begun, Danfodio had been a teacher, like I said, a charismatic teacher who was well known. So people they either sent their sons to go and learn under him, like in his school in Sokoto. So the guy who led the jihad in Adamawa, Modibo Adama, for example, he was someone who had studied under Danfodio, and there were many others like that. So that was one part of it. The other part was that these Fulani communities, like we said, staying, they were in almost every Hausa state, and they were settlers there. They had been there for a long time. Some of them for centuries. Danfodio's ancestors, I think he had about 6 ancestors who had been in that area before him. So they had all been in these places, and I think the fact that Danfodio, like I mentioned, he had mentored so many people who are in different parts of the country. So people who will come, study under him, and then go back. Now, when the jihad kicked off, they came and some of them said, some of them went to him and said, can we get the flag? And can you ordain us as the leader of the jihad in this place? And he gave them the flag, and he just gave the flag liberally to his former students, and then they started. So he had things like, for example, whereby in some parts of the country, what kicked off the jihad was farmers and herders. So this is a 200-year-old problem. What we are dealing with today is a 200-year-old problem, which is one of the kind of like depressing things about Nigerian history, is that a lot of these problems are not new. People had, these clashes between farmers and herders had been going on for a while. And in that sense, when the jihad kicked off, some people took advantage of that to settle the matter, if you like, once and for all between. So was it pre-planned? I don't think anybody can plan something like that because it was chaos, complete chaos, But yeah, and the jihad was nearly lost, in Sokoto. They got lucky in terms of the fact that there were some battles whereby they were nearly wiped out. And when you think about it, the person that they were fighting, the Gobir forces, they had 100,000 foot soldiers, and then several thousand more on horses, But these jihadists were just, they were just almost like a ragtag bunch of people. And they had rudimentary bows and arrows, maybe poisoned arrows, but beyond that, nothing much. And it was only after they had been able to defeat one large army and where they were able to then get horses and weapons and all that, but it was very, very close. The jihad could have been wiped out in their early battles. Somehow they won, and then the momentum carried them after that. So I wouldn't say if it was planned, they would very well have lost it. It was a series of events, and like I said, the fuel for it was that latent injustice that is present in everywhere in Nigeria today, whereby things can spring up and people who have a lot of long-standing issues will join with someone they feel, okay, maybe this person might liberate us or might be the start of a new era for us. So we will just join with this person just to get rid of a lot of these our long-standing problems.
Okay, but my history, if it serves me right, said he sent this Usman Danfodio, sent some of his brothers somewhere or the other to one or two of the states and so on. So is that correct? Is that in your book? That it was a send or something like that?
Well, no. So he had, I mean, his brother, his main brother Abdullahi was. So there was a. I like to call him the triumvirate. So Danfodio himself was the spiritual leader of the jihad. He was the visionary who gave the vision. His brother Abdullahi was the one who was um, the constitutionalist. So he was the one who wrote the constitution and designed the state in a theoretical form. And then his son Bello, Mohammed Bello, was the one who became kind of like the chief executive and the first sultan of Sokoto in theory. So because Danfodio never took that title himself. So between the three of them, they were the ones who built that state. And there was a lot of inconsistency in the message, if you like. So basically, they said, things they said they wouldn't do. As the jihad progressed, they ran into opposition. And even when you think about it, as the jihad spread to some places, there were some Fulani who were in places in northern Nigeria, small communities in northern, that had an excellent relationship with their hosts. Now, these Fulani, they were very respected. So the local kings there had made them senior special advisors, if you like. So they had complete access to the courts. They had everything they needed. These guys now realize that with this jihad coming, this is going to mess up our relationship and mess up things for us. So if we submit to this jihad, we lose our place, because the jihadists who are coming from outside would then take over and become the new leaders, and we don't want that. So some of these people actually fought against Danfodio and his forces. So there was a lot of local politics about. So I mean, him sending, like I mentioned, a lot of the jihad leaders were his former students. They had studied in his school and they had gone back. So and people like the guy in Bauchi, the guy in Adamawa, and all those places, they had studied under him. So to that extent, you might say yes. He gave them the flag and said, when they said we want to lead a jihad in this place, he gave them the flag and blessed them and asked them to go.
Okay, I'm going to come back to a very poignant question later on, but I just want you to track it, and I don't know if Pastor Sonny is on the platform. He might want to ask a few questions also. I just want to track it now. So after the jihad, what leads to amalgamation, and why are you connecting jihad with amalgamation, and what next? What is the tracking, and what are you trying to say?
Okay, so it's a long story. So jihad began in 1804, ended around 1809. Amalgamation happened in 1914. So it's a good century and a few years in between there. So what we track in between is various different things that happened. So we track the story of Abeokuta, and the Abeokuta people were people who, the disintegration of the Oyo Empire, which had happened in the late 18th century. And these were some of the people who had fled that disintegration and established a new community in Abeokuta under the rock as a refuge, and how they had built a new city-state, how people came. I mean, some people came from the Americas, missionaries came. It was a liberal place, if you like. But then Abeokuta also were the ones who facilitated the entry of Europeans into Nigeria. It was quite an irony in there, in the sense that because the Abeokuta people were very, very fiercely independent, but they were the ones who brought Europeans into the country, if you like. So we track that. We also track the missionaries, the explorers. So back then, there was a fascination with the Niger River. No one knew where it ended, how where it poured out into. So there were several people who tried to track it from the beginning, and it's a very, very difficult river to navigate. So you have a lot of like rapids, whereby the river drops precipitously, where it is impossible for you to ship through. This is what happened with people, someone like Mungo Park. He was trying to look for the end of the river, and then he got stuck somewhere in Nigeria where he died. So we track all of those different explorers, and then how people finally found the mouth of the river Niger and saw that, okay, and they were able to then finally track it and say, oh, this river empties out into the Atlantic Ocean. So basically coming around through inside the country and going all the way through the Niger Delta. So we track all of those. That had serious implications in the sense that once the Europeans were able to master and understand the flow of the river, then I mean, it was almost like the secret was out. So we track all of that. We also track the different things that were happening in places like Nupe, all the internal troubles, the internal squabbles that they had, their relationship with other nearby kingdoms, and how they treated people internally. We track what was happening in Benin, and then how we track what was happening in the Niger Delta as well. And all of this, how, and coming finally, we also track Lagos, how the British eventually took Lagos and how they stayed at the coast before actually thinking about coming internally. We also track how the Berlin Conference, which came to be known as the Scramble for Africa, then caused Europeans who previously had stayed just at the coast trading and maintaining their influence there, because the Berlin Conference set the new terms that says you can only claim a territory if you also claim what is behind the coast. So previously, European countries would stay at the coast and say, oh, we own everything behind the coast. But then the Berlin Conference, after they had divided and shared Africa, said that if you say you claim this country, you can't just stay at the coast. You have to have a physical presence internally. And then all of a sudden, we had this whole scramble where the British and the French were trying to outrace each other to claim the whole of what we know as Nigeria today. So we track all of that. And then finally, what led to the Europeans actually coming in, first of all, as trading, but then as agents of the government. So whereby they were leading to proper colonization, how Lugard came in, how he took all of the north of Nigeria, how the different groups conquered different parts of Nigeria, conquered the Egbas, conquered the Jebus, conquered Niger Delta, and all of this. So all of these different things were happening, and then they all sort of came together in 1914 when the southern parts of the country, which was under control of a different group of people, and the northern part of the country, which was also under the control of Lugard, and then how somebody in London decided that for accounting purposes, it makes sense to join these two countries together and make it easier for us to administer. And then you had Nigeria formed. So there was a lot that happened in between that Jihad and the amalgamation, but there was often things that look like independent events of each other, but we try to track that story and form a coherent narrative that this is what triggered this, and this was how the whole story came, and then how we came to be Nigeria as one country in 1914.
Yeah, two, three things. You said the Egbas or the people from Abeokuta brought in the British or the Europeans. I want you to substantiate that. And I want you to tell us what the real thinking of these Europeans and the British were when, they came to trade initially. So how did trade turn to colonialism? And what are the effects today of colonialism and the jihad on the Nigerian nation state?
Okay, so I think the Egbas, they were a small country relatively, and they wanted to protect their own independence, like fiercely independent people, but they were under constant threat by people around them. So especially what we know as the Benin Republic today, there were some really, really aggressive kings who raided into Nigeria, mainly for slaves, to capture slaves and all that. So the Egbas saw profit in partnering with the British for their own protection, just to protect themselves from being completely overrun, if you like. And the British had arms, and they could offer them protection. So that was how that was the entry, if you like, for self-protection, but then it had long-term ramification or long-term effects. So to the point about how trading turned to colonialism, colonialism was oftentimes it happened that some smart guys or some sharp business people would they will come they will go somewhere and then drag the British government into, usually when they got into trouble. But I think the fundamental change from trading to colonialism happened pretty much with the advent of a man called Joseph Chamberlain, who was colonial secretary. And at that point, he was the one who came up with the idea, or he introduced the idea of colonial development into British politics, saying that we can keep a territory, and even if we're not making money from it, it is our duty to treat it as a landlord, whereby we develop it we spend money on it, and we make it as viable as possible. All of this was the outcome of the combination. And then you had of a long-running effect whereby after slavery had ended, a lot of people, especially the Christian missionaries, felt that they needed to repay a debt that they owed, in the sense that we had taken slaves from this place so much, so we needed to introduce a different kind of development as recompense for all the evil that we had done. So the missionaries came first, but they had their own agenda, and then after that, after the missionaries and then the traders came. So the missionaries came, they felt that their own way was to turn everyone to Christians, and then the country will develop based on that if you introduce education to the country. And then you had the whole and then the traders, people like George Goldie, who came, and basically their whole idea was just, just get as much resources from here as possible, consolidate everything, create a monopoly whereby you are the main trader in town, and then trade everything from shea butter to ivory to export them to Europeans, who at that time, Europeans were trying to get rich, were getting quite rich as well. So things like soap, for example, had become in high demand in Europe. So again, you had the whole palm oil trade, which helped to fuel all of that. So the actual colonialism, the British government, they came in last. So you had the missionaries, the traders, you had the explorers, but the British government came in at the very end in terms of a force. And all of this again was triggered by the Berlin Conference. So before that, people could say, oh, we have a small colony or a trading post somewhere and we own it, and then we just don't do anything about it. All we are doing is just trading and making money and nothing. But then the Berlin Conference, the Scramble for Africa, introduced the idea that you can't just, if you stay at the coast, for example, if you stay at the coast of Lagos and say, oh, that we own that place. If the French go behind you and start to control Abeokuta, Ijebu, and all those places, eventually you have to leave that place. That place, the coast no longer belongs to you. So in trying to keep hold of what you think is your territory, you then have to make physical investment, if you like. So and this brought in the British state. So the Berlin Conference, for example, was mainly, it was states. It was government. It was a government conference, if you like. There were some individual people who attended, but it was mainly state by state. So France, Germany, Belgium, and the UK, all of them had in it. So it was a sequence of events, and then the colonialism came in at the very end.
Right. So how do you now relate all these things? The jihad, the adventurers, the missionaries, the colonialists, the traders, to the issues facing Nigeria today. They amalgamated the North. First of all, you said the North was under control of Lugard largely. The South, who was it under control of? They brought them together. How is that affecting our body polity today? How is it affecting Nigeria that we have found ourselves in?
Okay, so I think the first thing is that, like I said, depressingly, our problems are almost boring. They're not new. We have a lot of challenges that we're facing in terms of that have been around with us for a long time. Like I mentioned the example of the farmers and headers crisis, which has been going on for a very long time. But there's also that problem of unresolved injustice. People suffer an injustice and there's just no mechanism for them to get justice. People are wronged. Something bad happens and people just have to live with it, and then they carry that bitterness and inside of them for a very long time. Now, one of the things I'll say is that in terms of today, it makes Nigeria extremely vulnerable to outside forces. When you look at the British incursion into Nigeria, it was pretty easy in a lot of places because they were able to take advantage of those internal divisions, whereby I think Nupe is one of the best examples where the British will show up with 20 British people, but then they'll be able to raise an army of locals of tens of thousands. So Lugard, when he had been posted to Nigeria officially as the leader of, as the government's representative, before he actually showed up in Nigeria, he had sent he had sent his assistant to come to the country and to start recruiting people. By the time Lugard showed up, a few weeks after that guy, the guy had already recruited about 2,000 soldiers locally. So a white man just shows up and people just line up behind him and they are ready to fight with him. Why? Because there was somebody somewhere who had been bullying them, who had done injustice to them, and they felt and oftentimes all the British had to do was just basically say, we promise you independence. If you side with us, just side with us to help us defeat this guy, we promise you you'll be independent. And people will just line up behind them. So, our divisions, our unresolved injustice, it makes Nigeria extremely vulnerable. I joke with some people and say, look, if a foreigner shows up in Nigeria today and just starts throwing money in the air, he will raise an army very, very quickly. So we're very, very vulnerable to external forces, external mischief, in the sense that because we don't deal with our problems internally, we have a lot of aggrieved people who are angry at various things. All these killings that happen in the country, there is no justice. There's not much you can achieve as a country if you don't have a mechanism, for injustice, whereby somebody is wronged. That person can go to a court and say, this is what has been done wrong to me, and you get an impartial judiciary or impartial anything, and that person can access justice. That fundamental thing is the key thing, is one of the key lessons that we have today. Danfodio was able to take advantage of it in the sense that the Hausa ruling states had allowed a lot of unresolved injustice to fester. The British were also able to take advantage of it when they showed up, and it goes on and on. So we are, I think that's the first challenge. The second challenge is that one of the things we talk about in the book is that you can look at Nigeria as a commodity play for centuries. So, the example I like to give is that a slave, right? When you capture a slave, before selling a slave, people did not say, oh, let me give this slave a bath. Let me give him a haircut. Let me wear nice clothes for him. Let me put jewelry on him, to increase the value of the slave. No, that was not, it was basically, you capture a slave, often naked, you take them to the coast, the Europeans will show up and say, okay, we'll buy, and they buy. So in fact, sometimes when the Europeans would not buy a slave, they would just, people didn't know what to do, they just killed the slaves. After a while, the Europeans started buying everything. So, when you think about it that way, it might be uncomfortable for us to compare human beings to a commodity. But when you think about the fact that there was slavery wasn't a value-added business. You go somewhere, you raid the place, you catch as many slaves as you can, take them to the coast and sell. When you think about it, how we have found ourselves as a country in a position whereby, we export crude oil and we import refined products, it's this long-running commodity play. In between slavery and crude oil, we also had palm oil, which was what Europeans tried to use to win a lot of the local elites off slave trading. So we have this long commodity play that has been going on. The end of slavery was a violent affair. Like I said before, people could not deal with it. They couldn't countenance it. How can we end slavery? How can slavery be ended? We have been doing this thing for centuries. Our families have been doing it. Our ancestors have been doing it. How can you just say that, oh, all of a sudden, some people somewhere have said slavery is no more. It's no more. It's now an illegal activity. How can we now just stop that? So people refuse to countenance the end of slavery. And we're seeing that again now. So again, we are now at another point whereby we're coming to the end of another commodity. And oil prices crashed in 2014. Here we are in 2021. In August 2014, they crashed. Here we are in 2021, exactly 7 years later now. You see that a lot of our elites, all they've done in that 7 years, when you think about it, that they're just waiting for the prices to go back up. And now we're in a position whereby even if oil goes back to $100 a barrel today, it cannot do anything for Nigeria. We are past that point. $100 a barrel of oil cannot meet the needs of the country. We need a new economic model. And we say in the book, look, a new economic model that is based on human capital, not just commodities. So we're coming again to the end of that. How will the elite react to the fact that oil is no more? Oil is no longer a business. And slavery, just as slavery was what held the elite together, what held the societies together in different ways, a lot of unraveling will happen. And we are there now. We see a state that is so weak today. There's just no money. The government can't do anything. You cannot ask the Nigerian government to shake body, as they say, and come up with $100 million today just to do something. They can't do it. We can't build any infrastructure if we don't ask for money from China. We almost cannot pay salaries if we don't either print money or borrow money. We have no foreign exchange unless we start doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We cannot invest in our own future, in our own country as a country. So I think this commodity play, which has happened quite a lot, is playing itself out again. And we have the benefit of hindsight, and we have the benefit of an educated generation. At least we cannot say we do not know. We cannot say the information is out there, and we have to understand what is going on. And I think finally, the final point is violence. If violence worked as a way of resolving problems, Nigeria will have no problem today. Violence is one of the most overused tools in Nigeria, in Nigerian history. When you have one of the things that distracted leadership the most in Nigeria was just this rebellion and constant violence, people fighting everywhere. So you had a situation, for example, whereby a king, kings usually tended, I don't know where the idea came from, but basically a lot of kings tended to stay away from the people they govern. So usually maybe some distance away. Now the challenge with that is that in an era when there were no telephones or social media or anything, the king relied on somebody. So, for example, you had the sultanate in Sokoto, and then you had emirs in different places. Now, if an emir in one place was corrupt and was oppressing his own people, the sultan would only hear about it when things have gotten out of hand. And then at that point, the only thing he will say, the only response is that, oh, there's an uprising has risen in one of my territories, and all of a sudden he will now assemble soldiers and send soldiers there to go and quell it down, so they will fight, they will kill people and all that, and then the injustice remains, and then it flares up again very soon. So if violence was a way of resolving problems, Nigeria will have no problems today. It does not work. We have overused it. It's played out. So when you see, the government today, there's a problem somewhere, and the solution is to go and send soldiers in there to go and maybe quell the thing. It doesn't work. It buys you the piece of the graveyard for a few moments. But that latent injustice, that underlying injustice, remains unresolved, and it doesn't go away. And after a while, people are not afraid anymore. We saw October last year was a warning shot. We saw, the government could send soldiers to go and shoot at defenseless people, protesters that, at the toll gates. But really, when you see what happened across the country, we saw it all happening in real time. People, raiding factories, raiding homes of politicians, breaking all kinds of lawlessness. What did the police do? And they stood down. They stood down. You cannot use violence to quell a country like Nigeria. So I think those three lessons are very, very, poignant for us today. We are coming to the end of another commodity play. I pray, that this will be the last commodity play we have, because we seem to keep exchanging one for the other. Like I said, we exchange palm oil for slave trade, and then we exchange crude oil for palm oil. I hope that this is the last one, and that we begin to reorient ourselves towards what is above the ground, the human beings, a human capital-led. An example I like to give is that, look, If America has an enemy, for example, today and says, oh, and then the enemy decides that, oh, America's power is in finance, so what we are going to do is that at night, we will go and destroy Wall Street, right? So we say, oh, America controls the world using finance. So we say, okay, at night when America is sleeping, we'll just go, we'll send a bomb and drop it on Wall Street. You destroy the buildings, America will raise another Wall Street in another location in no time. It is the human being. As long as you don't destroy the actual bankers, the human beings who have the tacit knowledge, all that knowledge in human capital. If you can't destroy that, all you've destroyed is buildings. They'll still control the finance from another location. So we have to begin to think in terms of human capital. We have not done anywhere near enough with the human capital that we have. And one of the things we talk about in the book is that there was a 30-year period which offers a tantalizing glimpse of what Nigeria can be, what we call the Clapham sect era, where led by a European Christian who never even stepped into Nigeria, a man called Henry Venn, but then began to educate some locals and said, okay, what we'll do is we'll give you education and then you go and lead the way. And we see what happened, after the slave trade ended. Like I mentioned, the elites tried to continue the business through various illegal means. And one of the best stories is that of a giant of Nigerian history, Samuel Ajayi Crowther, who was captured in a local war, exchanged for a horse. The person who captured him exchanged him for a horse, and then another person sold him off again. Now, he and a bunch of other people were kept in a location in Lagos, waiting for the coast to be clear. So back then, the people who were doing the illegal slave trade, they used to look at the coast because the British had begun patrolling the Atlantic coast with the Royal Navy, trying to catch anybody who was still trying to export slaves. So this was all of this happened after 1807. So at that point, one of the people like Ajayi Crowther, so when people saw that, oh, the coast was clear, they would quickly smuggle the slaves, put them on a boat, and then try to go before the patrol came back. But then they were still caught. So what used to happen back then was that when they caught all those illegal slave ships, they rescued the slaves and then take them to Freetown, gave them education there, and then after being educated, many of them got new names. They found their way back to Nigeria, and with nothing more than education, a brand new elite was created in Nigeria with nothing more than education. So this was taking the lowest of the low. Slaves. You could not be lower than a slave in Nigerian society back then, but then being transformed by education and then coming back, and then these people became the new elite. And it is a remarkable thing because when you look at those people, those returnee slaves, which we call the Saros, the first set of people who got education in the middle of the 19th century, you will struggle to find any of their descendants today who is an illiterate. It is remarkable, whereby a drop of education in a family carried on for 2 centuries, and we're still at it. So it's a remarkable thing, and we try to chronicle how this happened, whereby, it was not oil, it was not a commodity, it was just education, whereby people were transformed by the power of education. They came back, they set up schools, they set up businesses, and they became a brand new elite, and in the country in which they had been slaves, which is so we can see that, if we are looking for the way forward for Nigeria as a country, I think that period offers us some lessons in sense that what we can do with the human beings of Nigeria, if we invest in our human capital and then allow human ingenuity to do the rest, it will be a remarkable country we will build.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Sonny has any questions or things he wants to say very quickly, while I ask other people on the platform to please indicate if they want to ask a question or make a comment by the raising of their hands electronically tonight. Sonny, any comments, any questions before?
I really want to appreciate you, Feyi. We feel like we're in a history class. You have spoken very well, and I think the teaching of history should be reintroduced to our schools so that people will have an idea of this kind of history that you talk about. So I'm familiar with most of these things that you have said today on the platform because I was born in the North. I grew up there. I went to school there from primary to university. So I'm familiar with the Usman Danfodio incursion, the Mansa Musa, the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire, and all the empires I'm sure most of us did back then in the 80s in school. The question I want to ask you, though, is, and you have alluded to it variously, how that Usman Danfodio, Fulani, they settled at the borders of the town, they conquered the town, and they put their people in charge. In today's Nigeria, can you still distinguish who are the real Hausas and who are the Fulanis? Because back down here in the South, there's a lot of confusion. Everybody is called the Fulani. They don't know who the Hausas are. They don't know who the Fulanis are. And where can they distinctly be located? Today, is there still that friction between them? Or have they smoothened out their relationship in the way they relate to each other?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. That's an interesting question. I also lived in the North a bit myself before I left Nigeria. But I think back then, the Fulani were very, very distinctive, in terms of not just, physically distinctive. They were light-skinned, they were tall, they had their noses were different from the local people. So there was a clear distinction between who was Fulani and who was Hausa back then. Today, not so much. Like I said, there's been a lot of intermarrying. Someone like Ahmadu Bello. So Ahmadu Bello, for example, his mother was actually a slave from what is today's Taraba. So Mohammed Bello and even Danfodio himself, they married locally. So the creation of the Hausa Fulani identity is therefore, I think it happened for a reason, because it is very, very difficult to say we want to distinguish between who is Hausa and who is Fulani today. Some people still try it. I guess maybe if you are looking for physical markers or physical distinction between them, you probably only find it in the pastoral Fulani, who, like I mentioned earlier, the cattle headers, for example, they never, they did not like the idea of intermarrying. They kept to themselves, and they're the ones who still speak the Fulfulde language. That Fulfulde language is very, very difficult. It's not an easy language to understand, but today the rest of the Fulani, they learned Hausa, they adopted the Hausa language, and then they, and there's been mixing. So today, if you want to hear Fulfulde, you probably only hear it from the actual header. So, today we, anything that happens in Nigeria today, Fulani headsmen, we don't really know who is actually a Fulani headsman. So there's a lot of criminality going on. I think we have to be honest with ourselves and say that, there's a lot of criminality going on, a lot of all this kidnapping that happens. All of these things are not Fulani people. There's a lot of, local criminality. There's a lot of within group criminality. There's a lot of external criminality as well. I think the main lightning rod is that we have the cattle headers who are, and again, all of this happens because of problems that we fail to deal with. Today in Nigeria, unfortunately, cattle herding is not a business. It is not a business in the sense that if you were to look at the numbers of, if you were to take all the numbers of a Fulani header, and put it on a spreadsheet, it does not add up. The only way it is sustainable is if they eat free food. That's it. And that free food gets harder and harder with the challenges of climate change. So previously in the past, for example, as a header, for example, so the way you do it is you go and head in one place, you finish eating all the grass and then you move away. Now, in the past, if you go away for 6 months, you can come back to that place and the grass would have grown again and then you eat it. But with climate change, and more cows, you now have a challenge whereby if you graze in a place you can't come back in 6 months. The grass will either not have grown, it won't have grown because of climate change. So, which means that you have to travel further and further before you can come back to that place. And this is what is causing the downward movement, whereby the herders have to travel further and further to find food before they can go back, because it's almost kind of like a rotation type of thing. So that the business makes no sense unless the cattle eat free food. It doesn't make it doesn't make any.
No, let me finish praying.
It doesn't make any financial sense, which is why you are having all these clashes whereby people are just taking their cows and just eating people's food, eating people's farm, or drinking water wherever they might find it. This is a challenge that can be solved. I tell people all the time, America faced this challenge as well. Exactly. Herders taking their cows and going to eat people's farms. And there were clashes, there were violent clashes. And even America, everybody had guns. So, the farmers had guns, the herders had guns, they would shoot each other. These things happen exactly, but it was solved by a series of policy actions that transformed that whole business from just a roaming about type of thing to ranching and to a proper meat industry, meat business that you see today. It is not beyond human ingenuity to solve this problem, but we don't, we leave problems to fester, and now it has turned into what is at core a financial problem, a sustainability problem, has now turned into an ethnic crisis, a religious crisis, and all kinds of different crises, an economic crisis as well. So, to come back to your question, Fulani headers, yes, there's a Fulani header problem in the sense that their business does not make sense unless they go and eat people's farm for free. But then there's a lot of criminality as well, taking advantage of any kind of breakdown in law and order, or any just kind of weakness of the state anywhere. So that's all that. We're talking in the South, whereby there's a lot of clashes between them. But in places like Zamfara, it is not herders. It is pure criminality, banditry, whereby bandits are killing people who are just local people in the community, their own people. It's quite bad in a lot of places in the North as well. So, this lawlessness and criminality, it doesn't have one name. It might be convenient for us as people to just catch everything and put everything under the umbrella of Fulani headers, but in reality, we are dealing with a myriad challenges that need real leadership, not just strong leadership, but real leadership that can think us out of this hole we found ourselves.
Okay, Sonny, do you have any other questions for him before I turn it in? Or maybe...
No other question, so I'm okay.
Okay, good. Ola Grace, do you want to ask your question or make your comment, please?
Yes, please. Good afternoon, sir. Oh, sorry. Good evening, sir. I just want to ask and point out that thank you, sir, for the wonderful presentation. But in an event where the motive of the federating units are clearly different, because if we want to look at Nigeria strictly from the transatlantic trade and the issues that went on at that point, we might also forget about the Trans-Sahara issues, because that is where the problem of the Fulani issues actually stem from. The Fulani, is the mix. They are not a mysterious people. They are a mix of the Bantustan and the Arabs that were slaves long before the transatlantic trade ever started. Those that were the African women that were taken out from the horns of Africa, the Egypt side and all those areas, into the Arab world. And of course, a lot of the women that were impregnated, the kids were not received. And then, of course, this tribe of people. And then they started to come back. So that explains, the fact that they had an early exposure to civilization ahead of the Bantustan man who was back and behind in Africa. But the issue now is that till date, the quest of the Fulani man is to have a place to call their own, an identity of their own that would unite all of them from the different. That's why when they find a place, they call all the others of their people to come in and come and take over. There is a space. If we look at it purely from the issue of headsmen and looking for pastures, I will beg to differ. I've been to like 30 states of Nigeria, and I know that there is like unfinishable pasture in Niger State, in Kebbi State, in a lot of the states in the north. And the quest of the Fulani man is not to feed his cattle. Because again, I mean, I know by first-hand information that a lot of the villages where people have been expelled from, the Fulanis have moved into their houses and they are no more pasteurizing. So they and exactly the same basis for which they infiltrated the northern Nigeria. And of course, because they had finer and more sophisticated multiracial girls, they were able to infiltrate the northern oligarchy. So how can we, even though we talk about leadership, because if we continue to focus on the apparent and we leave the subtlety of the fact that till date, the quest of the Fulani man is to get a place to call their own, an identity, which in the world right now, they might be one of the very few people that do not have a nation of identity, so to speak, as a people. So you have them scattered all over Africa and trying to find their bearing, because the Arabs do not, identify with the multiracial Arabs. They don't accept it. You're either Arab or you're not. So, because if we continue to just relate to them from the point of view that, these are like, very, they're not trying to build a Nigeria with us. I'm sorry to say this, but it's as stark as it is. How can we merge these two agendas of building a Nigeria and people who are looking for self-determination and self-identity at any cost?
Okay, thank you very much. Feyi, do you want to have a go at that?
I think that's it's a challenging way to frame the problem, because, a Fulani person whose ancestors for 6-7 generations have been in Nigeria, what is that person? He's a Nigerian, there's, like I said, even Dan Fodio, his ancestors about 3 or 4 times removed who migrated to Nigeria. He was born in what we know as Nigeria today. His children, his descendants have all been born in, who are they? They're Nigerians, So if we are still thinking about the Fulani as a separate or other people, then I think we have a challenge. They're not foreigners. A lot of these people have, they've grown up in Nigeria for centuries. They're as Nigerian as pretty much anyone else. So I think we have if we continue to view Fulani as foreigners or people who want to infiltrate or take over the country, well, then I think we have it makes the problem a lot harder to solve if that's the way we view it. Personally, like I said, from me, Buhari, the president, for example, today, is he Fulani? Is he Hausa? You can't tell. It's very, very difficult. Today, because of that whole intermarriage and mixing, you cannot really separate and pull out a Fulani and say, oh, okay, this is pure Fulani. There's too much mixing has gone on, whereby we have all become, they've all become, certainly in northern Nigeria, the Fulani and the Hausa, the mix has gone on for so long that it's not really possible. The only people you can really identify as pure Fulani, like I said, is the small number of people who are who remain pastoralists, who follow their cows all over the country. And like I said, those people and the elite Fulani who were settlers, what is called the house Fulani, those people, they did not like each other. They disliked each other. The pastoralists disliked the settlers because they felt like the settlers were sellouts who married locally, who adopted local languages, and who made the Fulani blood impure. If what we are talking about today is we are saying, just the local, the pastoral Fulanis alone, how many are they? Who are they? For one thing, these people the pastoral Fulanis have always rejected education. Some of us, might remember, if you were alive, when Babs Fafunwa was education minister and he tried to do nomadic education. He failed, woefully. They were sending teachers to go and educate pastoralists, headers, in wherever they were staying. It failed. These people have always rejected education completely. They never wanted it. So the ones who adopted education were the ones who also adopted the Hausa custom, the Hausa language, and various other things. These people, you cannot genuinely try to begin to remove, like I said, Bello and Danfodio and the others were Fulani themselves. But by the time you go down a couple of generations, they are so intermarried, they are so married people from so different places that you cannot really say that somebody is Fulani and somebody is Hausa, and then to say that Fulani is kind of like a distinct personality who wants to take over the country. You might as well say the Hausa want to take over the country, or the North wants to take over the whole of the country, which is a different thing because, the North, they're Nigerians as well, so they want to take over Nigeria. Well, fair enough. We already have a situation whereby we vote, we move things from north to south. So we vote the Northerners have their way of doing things, and then we vote Southerners. The Southerners have their way of doing this. So I think it's very, very difficult for us to say, to distinguish the Fulani as a separate individual entity who is looking for something. I think that ship has sailed.
Well, that's a very good comment, Feyi, and I like you, and I like the fact that you are strengthening that position. But I think what Grace was saying is the jihad still on? The impression that some people have, and I'm being very open and frank here, is that there is still some kind of a jihadish motivation, other than even just the spread of Islam, but there's some political drive towards this question of sinking the Quran in the Atlantic and so on and so forth. That's number one.
Okay.
Wait. Number two is that, in fact, one of the challenges Buhari had when he was coming on, and I know he went all over Nigeria trying to prove that he neither wanted to northernize nor Islamize Nigeria. I know that for a fact. I was at one of the fora that he convened to tell a group of people, so if that fear or that anxiety was not there, he wouldn't have spoken to it. But that was his campaign electioneering position in 2011. That's what he spent his time doing, convincing people that he was not a northern or Muslim agendist. And today people are saying that they don't believe, because most of what is happening in Nigeria seems to point in that direction. And the critical thing she said was that it looks as if you have a Nigeria that's not a Nigeria. Pockets of different people who don't have a Nigerian ethos and who are looking for their own agenda, plus and including the Fulani. Maybe the Igbos too have theirs and the Yorubas have theirs. Maybe their own is to succeed or whatever it is. But it looks as though there was some kind of insistence and some kind of collaboration, almost even with the British, to ensure that the Northerners remain somehow in power for as long as possible or whatever. I don't know if you want to speak to that, because that is something we don't want to sweep under the carpet.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's okay. So that's I'll say, what I'll first say is that that's a separate point. Now, I think what you're referring to here is political Islam. Now, political Islam is a toxic ideology. I'm not going to mince words about that. Political Islam is a toxic ideology, whereby you politicize a religion and you govern on the basis of that religion. It has no place in Nigeria today, and it is a cover for all kinds of other things, all kinds of debauchery, corruption, whatever, whereby when people want to take religion, and in this case, Islam, and politicize it, now that is a different beast entirely. It's a separate beast from ethnic problems. It is and I think one of the best examples is Saudi Arabia, where we see that the political ruling class are in bed with the fundamentalist Wahhabis, which is why you see some really crazy things happening in Saudi Arabia today, whereby you see, for example, just to use a random example, the religious police going around with sticks, and then they are flogging women's ankles, because their ankles are exposed, those kind of things, or Sharia, whereby a governor or somebody who does not have any development agenda to improve the lot of his people gives them Sharia in lieu of development, or we can use the example of Governor Ganduje. This man was caught on video putting money in his babariga, and then not long after, he becomes the champion of anti-blasphemy. Again, he was trying to ingratiate himself to the political, to the Islamic, fundamentalists, whereby people can then say, "Oh, okay, well, he stole money as a governor, he put money in his babariga, but hey, he upholds Islam," that kind of thing. It is a selfish ideology. It is a toxic ideology, and it will stop any kind of development from happening. You cannot have any serious kind of development, because it means you are getting to the point whereby you can almost not question leadership, because the leaderships will now claim that its authority comes from heaven or from God, that sort of thing. So in that sense, if what you're talking about is political Islam as an ideology, then I will agree with you 100%. Like I said, it's a toxic ideology, and it has no place in Nigeria. So I mean, it is probably a stretch to say that Nigeria is a secular state. We're not really a secular state. We're a multi-religious state, which is our reality. We are not a state whereby we have religion, we show it openly. But we are multi-religious in the sense that we cannot have one religion dominating our way of life and becoming politicized, which is why one of the things that has alarmed me the most was the question of the communications minister. In Nigeria, look, we've had all kinds of, we can see the relationship our politicians have with religion. The Christian politicians, we know the pastors they go to. We know the pastors that pray for them. We know the pastors they are close to. The Muslim politicians, we know the clerics that they go to. We know the marabouts that they visit. We know the people that pray for them. Some, we even know the traditionalists. We know the shrines that they go to, where they go to for prayers and for powers and for healing and all those kind of things. All of these things have been there. But we've always had even if not clearly stated, a separation whereby we know who the politicians are and we know who the religious people are. We know who the politician is and we know who the cleric is. We know who the politician is, we know who the governor is, we know who the president, and we know who the pastor is. These things have been clearly separated. But with the communications minister now, we are now in uncharted territory whereby somebody is a politician and a cleric rolled into one, and the person is in office. It's a big challenge for Nigeria to have that kind of thing whereby you have somebody who is a cleric, a fundamentalist cleric, and that person is also a politician in high office. That distinction and separation has gone. But let me assure you one thing. Nigeria has not been easy to govern for anybody. Nobody can impose something on this country. There is something about Nigeria that even I have not been able to understand. I've tried to, but look, and the example I've used recently is, look at a country like Nigeria, right? Look at the space where we exist in. It's not that big a space when you compare it to, say, India. India is about 4 times the size of Nigeria. Or China. China is several times the size of Nigeria. Nigeria as a country, remarkably, now, it was not the British who introduced us to each other by putting a map around each other. It was not the British that made the Yorubas aware of the Hausas or the Igbos aware of the Yorubas. No, we've had relationship with each other for centuries, in different ways, either slave trading or different kind of trading. So we have been having a relation, and amazingly, today, Nigeria is a place with more than 500 languages. It is very, very odd at least to me. You know, like I mentioned, India has 1.4 billion people, 7 times the number of Nigeria. The land is much bigger. They have less than, they have about 100 fewer languages than we have in Nigeria today. China has fewer languages than Nigeria has today. Again, much larger country, multiples of the people we have, you know. But you look at, you can look at Indonesia as a place that has more languages than Nigeria. But Indonesia is made up of almost 20,000 islands. And across the world, when you look at the spread of languages, it tracks with isolation, whereby if you have an area that is mountainous, that has a lot of mountains or a lot of remote areas, you have more languages in that place. But for some reason, this does not hold in Nigeria. You know, Nigeria has over 500 languages in a small space of just 200 million people. And one of the things that we found in Nigeria is that there's this streak of independence that runs through almost every group in the country. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what explains it, but the sense that people just do not want to be dominated by anybody else. And it helped the British. The British played into it, like I mentioned earlier, by just simply promising someone independence and say, look, if you support us against this person, just, you know, we'll allow you to be free and they will no longer disturb you. And people jumped on that. You know, that streak of independence, you know, the fact that it is across the country in different groups, you see a group of just 5,000 people, they will maintain their own language and their own identity, and they will not want to be under anybody else. It is bad in the sense that it makes it difficult for us to build a nation together, but it is also a defense against anybody imposing anything on Nigeria. The British did not find it easy. You know, I mean, they ran away in the end. You know, after World War II, when they were broke, the opportunity they had, they ran away. You know, so if anybody thinks that they can impose a kind of ideology on the country, a kind of religion on the country, I mean, it is one of the reasons why violence has not worked in Nigeria, because people die hard. You know, Nigeria is full of a lot of diehard groups and people whereby you cannot just impose something top down. So the worst that will happen is that the person will waste his time. You know, if somebody wants to say, oh, I want to Islamize the country, I want to northernize the country, or I want to impose political Islam on the country, the worst that will happen is that that person will waste his time. It is not going to happen. You know, so I think we should, I don't want to say we should be reassured in that sense, because waste of time is not good either. You know, we can waste a lot of time fighting these silly battles, but I think we should have the confidence to think of bigger problems, you know, to think of further down the line, in the sense that, look, nobody's going to Islamize Nigeria. It's not going to happen. You know, I mean, they can waste their time, they can waste the country's time, but it is not, we are not going to turn Nigeria into an Islamic republic or even a Christian republic if somebody had that ambition, or turn the whole, or take over the whole country. There are just too many, that streak of independence, there are just too many. I mean, you talk about they wanted to dip the Quran in the sea. Yes, I mean, it was logical. If you're in the north, you are landlocked, you know, and access to the coast back then was, I mean, it made all the difference in the world. You know, if you control the coast, then you had access to the world and all that kind of. So it made sense logically for somebody to say, "Oh, we want to dip the Quran in the coast and then take over the whole country so that we can have access to the coast." You know, not so much that for anything other than almost kind of like a territorial and economic ambition, but it was not for lack of trying. You know, I mean, people tried to get. I mean, the Jihad moved past the Middle Belt. It tried to get to the Niger Delta. It failed. You know, people had to turn back, you know, all the creeks and all those kind of things. Horses could not get there, horses drowned, or you know. So all of those things are, I mean, Nigeria is, it's not, if it could be done by anybody, it is definitely not by the current crop of leaders that we have. You know, I mean, they're not, if our leaders were good enough to attempt something which is probably the most difficult thing to do in Nigeria today, trust me, they would have built bridges, they would have built roads, and they would have done so many other things in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. I won't take you deeper into that our leaders are able to build roads and bridges, things that they should have done. I noticed the comment and I note it very seriously. You said it very casually, very simply, but it's very deep. We're just going to take a set of 4 questions and then we begin to actually round up. We have actually run out of time. There's a Benjamin Omeza Ayo and Ayokunle Fawehinmi, Samuel Dada, and Ituah Okoje. They all want to ask questions. So I'm going to please ask them to make it very, very short, 30 seconds each. And then you please note those questions and then have quick, sharp responses. And then we begin to close. So Benjamin Omeze, Ayokunle Fawehinmi, Samuel Dada, and Ituah Okoje, Princess, in that order. Please ask your questions. Thank you. Short, straight to the point.
Good evening, sirs. Pastor, you asked my first question already. My second question is on the issue of restructuring. What's your view about the whole restructuring, the clamor for restructuring? Thank you very much, sir.
Do you want me to answer first, or do we take all the questions?
You'll answer all the questions together. Ayokunle, please go ahead. I like that Benjamin asked his own question. Please do better than him.
Thank you very much. I wanted us to take a look at the dynamics of state capture versus the jihad. State capture within the dynamics of political Islam, and particularly the change of demographics for political capital by embedded population from outside.
Very good. I do believe that you've noted that the dynamics of state capture. Samuel Dada, please go ahead.
Okay. I want to ask a question. If we must stay together, why must we stay together with people that has no the same culture with us? Thank you.
Why must we stay together with people that don't have the same culture? I think Olu, my assistant, also sort of alluded to this. How do we treat this, our diversity? Can we harvest this diversity, or are we too diverse to remain together? Ituah, please, your question.
I was going to ask the same question, and I was going to relate it to the fact that if the Fulani have an agenda, a self-agenda for themselves, why do we need to stay together? It was the same, more or less the same question. So I won't repeat it, I guess. Thank you.
No, thank you for not repeating it and repeating it.
Okay. Do you want me to go now? Okay. Okay. So the first question on restructuring, what do I think? I think yes, definitely restructuring is definitely needed. Now, obviously, one of the challenges is that everyone has a different definition of what they think restructuring is. But then again, you know, it's never we're a loud nation of 200 million people. We're full of ideas, you know. So I mean, I guess we probably need to have a way to we need to find a way to talk in the sense of how restructuring. But you know, I think for me, one of my favorite ways of thinking about it is a U.S. Supreme Court judge. Justice Louis Brandeis, and the way he said it was that the beauty of a federal system is that it allows one part of the country to conduct an experiment without disturbing the other parts of the country. And even though you're all within the country, but different parts can try out different ideas. And if somebody does something that tries out an idea and is good, then that idea can spread to the rest of the country. And you can see America, one of the most recent examples of that in America today was the pandemic, you know. Yeah, I mean, different states in America handled the whole thing differently. You know, I mean, it was quite an amazing experiment in terms of we probably, I mean, after we've done all of this, you know, we'll probably, once we come out of the pandemic, we'll probably have some very good ideas about what actually worked. Did masks work? Did lockdowns work? You know, did the closing bars work? The closing schools work? We will find answers in America, because so many different parts of the country did different things without disturbing it. So some people, some Republicans, they didn't like certain things. They didn't like lockdowns. They didn't like masks, and they didn't do that. Some people liked masks. Some people liked lockdown. They shut down everything. But it all happened within the same country. The federal government, had its own ideas, and you can see the whole vaccine thing as well. Some states are using lottery to boost vaccine take up. Some states are using paying people $50. Some states are paying giving people donuts. So for me, restructuring for a country like Nigeria will lead us to a path whereby to a place whereby different parts of the country can do different things without disturbing other parts. And we have to be realistic and say, if one part of the country wants Sharia, that's it. I mean, if they want Sharia, it's fine. Let them have Sharia. But it is something that affects them. So one of the complaints about that people have when they talk about Sharia is how VAT, for example, they charge VAT on beer. And then the VAT is shared among everybody, including the people who are anti-beer. They collect VAT money. So I think a kind of restructuring is whereby local resources, there's more resource control. Local taxes are kept more locally. So if you raise 1 billion naira in VAT in Lagos, for example, I would expect at least the bulk of that, 70% at least, to stay in Lagos, and then maybe the rest will go to the center. Same thing goes for resource control. I would expect that at least 70% of all proceeds will stay in the Niger Delta. It belongs to them. For me, 13% derivation cannot work under a true federal, a restructured Nigeria. The bulk of the money will stay with the people where the oil is. And if you have gold in Oyo State or Oshu State, whatever you make gold in Zamfara will stay in Zamfara, that sort of thing. So, for me, it's that kind of thing. It doesn't need to have a definition per se, but it needs to be able to allow different parts of the country to adopt different ideas. And if Ekiti starts something and it works and it's a good idea, then there should be inbuilt flexibility whereby Gombe can copy an idea for Ekiti and replicate it there. So that's my idea of restructuring. And I think definitely we need it. We don't, this whole business of top down where somebody's sitting in Abuja and trying to do, whenever we want to build hospitals, for example, we will have to do it in 6 geopolitical zones. Or whenever we do something in one place, we have to do it in another place because we are doing balance and trying to get the country to move at the same speed. It cannot work. People, we should be comfortable with a country where different parts move at a different pace. So that's my idea of restructuring. State capture and external population. State capture is an interesting thing. There are different ways that state capture happens, but fundamentally, if you capture the Nigerian states, what are you capturing today? You're capturing all revenues. That's about it. I mean, the Nigerian state is weak. It cannot do much. And I always say, the president today, cannot say, for example, imagine that Buhari was to say something happened and say, okay, he gives an order for the toilets in Muritala Mohammed Airport to be clean. The vice president did it one time, or the vice president flew over Apapa one time and they said, oh, you'll be stopped. They cannot do that. The power of the presidency of the state, it cannot be expressed in a positive way, whereby the president, the government will say, we want this good thing to happen, and then it will happen. But what they can exercise is negative power. So they can block you from getting something, that is within their power. Or they can stop you from getting a contract, or stop you from stop a law from passing that will give you something. So the state is weak. If you capture the state today, what is the meaning of the state for somebody in Zamfara today? Who is living under banditry? What is the meaning of the state for a lot of people in the northwest of Nigeria today who are now living under the reign of Ituah, who are paying taxes to terrorist groups? What is the meaning of the state for somebody in the middle of in the middle belt of Nigeria today? What does the state do for them? What does the state do for a Nigerian? What do you get as a Nigerian? That's why a lot of people say, you only actually realize you're a Nigerian, or the meaning of being a Nigerian only happens to you when you are outside of the country and you have a passport and then you have that label. But when you are in Nigeria, what does it mean to be a Nigerian? One of the things I always say is that, one of the ways I'll try and build a state is that every child who is born in Nigeria, I'll say, create an account for them as soon as they're born and put 50,000 naira inside it that they cannot touch until they're 18. But just basically, or even if it's just say, something that says you got this thing because you're in Nigeria and then you're building state capacity. What is the meaning of it? So, somebody captures the state, it has no real meaning or impact on the lives of ordinary Nigerians. You are just capturing all revenues and a very, very weak state that cannot do much. So in terms of state capture by an external population, well, to be honest, I'll say, go ahead. If somebody wants to capture, look at Abuja today. If things continue as they are, if we're not careful with the way things are deteriorating in terms of security, this insecurity is going to get to Abuja very soon. If things are not, if we allow things to continue to slide and drift, and if we continue to have a leadership that is just so physically and intellectually disinterested and lazy, whereby they don't address problems only to come out and just basically threaten one part of the country and then you go back silent again. If things continue to deteriorate as they are like this, then the state might not even be able to defend the symbol of its own territory in Abuja there very well. It can happen. So state capture, to be honest, it means if somebody captures the state in the UK or in America, then that's a whole different ballgame, because the state has a direct relationship with citizens. So, it can be quite a major thing. But in Nigeria, can the government give every Nigerian 5,000 naira today? Just say you want to transfer 5,000 naira to every Nigerian. Where is the infrastructure to do it? Can you really do it? Do you even know how many Nigerians there are? Do you know the name of any Nigerian? How can you? It cannot do it. It cannot do. If the government in the UK today, if the Chancellor goes into the Parliament today and says he wants to give every Black Briton of Nigerian origin £1,000, I will get that money because there's a direct link. The money will land directly inside my bank account. If the government says they want to give, so there's a direct link between the government and but we don't have that yet. So state capture is a concept. It doesn't really mean much. The final question: cultural differences and why should we stay together? Now, this is a good one. The thing is that if you've traveled around the world or to different countries, you will find cultural differences everywhere. I live in the UK. If you travel down south from the south all the way to the north, you're going to run into different cultures. We all speak the same language in English. Same thing in China. If you travel, if you go to Sichuan, the food they eat there is very, very different from what you get in Shanghai or Beijing or all that. Even in different parts of the world, everywhere, people live with cultural differences. It's a part of life, and this is even in China where 90% of the population are one ethnic group, you will find differences. It is a part of life. In France, you will find different cultural differences and everywhere. What people do is to put something above their diversity, an idea that people can buy into as a nation state. In America, there are cultural differences everywhere. The South was very, very culturally different from the North, especially during the time of slavery. But there's an idea of what it is to be an American, that you can come from anywhere and you can make it here. At least, even if it's not totally true, but it's an idea that people buy into. That as an immigrant, you can come from any part of the world. You come to America, you make it in America. So you have people build an idea on top of their diversity. If you don't have that idea on top of that, then your diversity is a lot more pronounced. And this is what we're having in Nigeria today, whereby we have all these different ethnic groups, but there's no idea of what it means to be a Nigerian. Which is why I joke about that point about that. If the government begins to give every child who is born in Nigeria, say you want to give them, just 50,000 naira when they are born, and then you put it in an account, and then say the child can access it when they are 18. You have a whole generation who will grow up and say, okay, at least I got something because I was a Nigerian. And not because I was a Nupe man, not because I was an Igbo man, not because I was a Yoruba man, because I was a Nigerian. And I got it as a Nupe man, and you also got it as a Taraba man. You got it as an Igbo man. You got it as a, we have to put something above, an umbrella that people can buy into as an identity. And that is how people live with cultural differences. I mean, the UK and Scotland have been one country. The Act of Union was in 1707, 300 years. Since you can see, there's still the cultural differences are still there. Some people want to secede. So Scotland wants to leave the UK, but it has worked for 300 years by having that identity on top of it, saying that we are all British, even though you are Scottish, you are Welsh, you are Irish, we are all British. You're English, we're all British. What we have lacked in Nigeria is that. And this is the work of leadership, to create an identity. What does it mean to be a Nigerian? And why should anyone be a Nigerian? Differences do not disappear, even if you balkanize the country into different parts. If you cut it into 6 parts, 7 parts, you will find differences still, and you have to live with each other. Unless you want to break everything down to tribal level, you have to still find a way to live with each other. It might be easier because we already have a sort of a Yoruba identity, for example, that covers a whole bunch of different people. So you have people from Ondo, from Ijebu, from Oyo, from Osun, all those kind of places, who all, a lot of them speak very, very different languages and they have different cultures, but they all call themselves Yoruba, And then you have the same thing with in the Southeast, for example, where you have people from Ebonyi, you have people from Abia, all these people who all have a lot of cultural differences, but they call themselves Igbos. That's the kind of thing we need to replicate at the national level in Nigerian identity, and that's how we live. And beneath that Nigerian identity, and going back to my first question of restructuring, that we can live side by side with each other peaceably. Do your own thing, I do my own thing. We move at different speeds, and no quarrel, no fights. And the reason why this is worth it, to wrap up, the reason why it is worth it is that Nigeria as one country of 200 million people, where we have known each other for so long, we have interacted with each other for centuries, possibly 1,000 years. We are not going. You're not going to disappear. We are neighbors. We are stuck in the same region together as neighbors. The reason why is that there is value in having that big internal market and that big that size that it gives us, that we can be a country if we unite together, if we have a way of living with each other in that way, that then we're no match. No, there's nobody around us that's a match for us. That there's nobody that can step to Nigeria even in this our neighborhood. If we are as one Nigerian country, nobody. Even if they all team up together, everybody in West Africa, if they team up together, they are not a match for Nigeria. If we can find a way to live with each other and have underneath a common Nigerian identity and say this is what it means to be a Nigerian, then we will find that we are a force to be reckoned with, in not just in Africa, but in the world.
Thank you very much, Feyi Fawehinmi. I will call you and try and touch base with you and see how we can deepen this conversation further and see what roles we can play in trying to bring about a Nigerian nation state. I'm going to ask you my final question, and I just want you to answer as briefly as you can. If you are head of state or president of Nigeria, what would you do in this country, and how would you advise us to forge ahead in the situation we have found ourselves?
Well, there's no magic bullets. There's no magic answer. There's no silver bullet. One thing, but I think I would like to see us in the immediate period that we find ourselves, we should defy our leaders in not just disobedient, but we should challenge our leaders more. Buhari as president gets away with a lot. He gets away with a lot that it is unbelievable that a president, a democratically elected president, can get away with stuff like that. He doesn't talk to the people. He just comes out, says what he likes, and he goes. And I mean, he is performing at a level that is, 10% of what we should expect from a leader of this country, and we deserve more. We should demand more, and we should make that, our voices louder and heard, in the sense that we should demand more from the leadership of our country. We are not electing, our president is not a king. Our president is not a spiritual leader. He is a democratically elected leader, answerable to the people. And it is up to us, if we like to, we might pretend that we are the elite of the country, but we should begin to forge, and we're coming up to elections again, 2020. Elections are always coming in Nigeria, 2023. But, we should begin to ask serious questions of why, not because he's running again, but because those questions will then put whoever wants to take over from him on notice. So whoever is coming after him, that person needs to be put on notice that we demand a better standard of leader. We do not tolerate this anymore. We do not want a leader who just talks to the people anyhow, has no empathy, cannot speak to the people. I mean, the southeast of the country is going through a serious crisis. You leave Abuja and you go there. You go to the Obi's palace, office, you go and talk to the people. You go and talk to the people. You don't just wake up and start threatening people with civil war that happened, and reminding people of the civil war. No, that's not how it works. The leader, you leave your office where you are in Abuja and you go to the scene of the place as the president and you talk to the people, and because Nigeria, linked to the question about violence that we talked about previously, we have pretty much been, as a country, for almost 200 years of military rule, which is one of the points we make in the book. That when you think about Nigeria from the Jihad and from all that period up until 1999, Nigeria was pretty much under military rule in different forms. Even colonial rule was military in a very large sense. But since 1999, 21 years now, this is the first time in our history where we can say we have sustained democratic rule, even if it doesn't look like a democracy in a lot of times, but a rule whereby at least we elect our leaders, even if there's rigging, there's whatever, but in theory we have a say. This means that the skills that you needed to be a leader previously in the past, military rule, talking to people anyhow, or carrying a gun, those skills are no longer, we don't need those skills anymore. What we need now is the skills of persuasion, people who can talk. You have to be able to talk to people, get inside the heads of Nigerians and convince them. Even if you want to have a policy, you want to do a policy, if you craft a policy in Abuja, no matter how well designed it is, if it lands in the middle of people and they don't buy into it, that's the end. It will not work. So we need persuasion as a skill. And that is what we should be demanding from whoever is our next set of leaders. Buhari is the last of his generation, right? So the Civil War generation, who they won the Civil War, they carved up the country as they like. It's finished. The only other person is Danjuma, and Danjuma is not going to become president after Buhari. So we are transitioning away from that era, and what we will now need is for people. And we're a young country. 70% of the population of Nigeria is under 30, the vast majority of the country. This means that when you think about it, we've had democracy now for 21 years. It means that the vast majority of the country, they don't have, all they have known in their adult life is this democracy. A lot of people, it can be amazing, but the majority of Nigerians today, they don't really
experience Abacha in any real sense. Most people are young. So a younger generation, can begin to demand better and say, look, all that one of military style leadership, using violence to quell problems, it's not going to work anymore. We now have to have leadership that, that connects with people, that can get inside the heads of Nigerians and convince them of why they need to do things in certain ways. So I will say that, we should begin now. We should not wait until 2023 before a bunch of different people start to present themselves, but we should begin now by what we want. We should begin to demand that of Buhari. And by doing that, we should put whoever is coming next on notice. We should, it doesn't matter whether he responds or whether he's he's lazy or whatever he does. We should begin to demand that, begin to shape the idea of what we want as a president, because he's on his way out. 2 years time, he's gone. But we should begin to, articulate what we expect of a leader, so that the next person who is coming will be on notice. And that is, that job is down to all of you, myself included, as quote unquote the elite in Nigeria. We can begin to shape those ideas and make sure we begin to put that idea out there in the public.
All right, thank you very much. We're very grateful. Thank you for coming. As I said, we will engage further. I will talk you and we will see what to do. Next week, we're going to be having the country of our dreams. Kunle Oshobi will be speaking to us about building the country of our dreams. Our speaker today, Feyi, has been talking about an ethos. A dream is something on top of our ethnicity that we can all aspire to as Nigerians. He's even suggested that they should give Pastor Ituah 50,000 in retrospect, maybe 60 years ago. Maybe by now my 50,000 will be about $1 billion. I don't know. So that will make me say that I am a Nigerian. But what he's saying really is that there must be a national ethos, a Nigerian, something that's far above our ethnicity, that makes us want to aspire and serve and belong and be proud to say that we're Nigerians. So Kunle will be taking it further next week to see if it is possible to build a country of our dreams. What are we dreaming about? What do we expect? What do we want in Nigeria? Where do you see Nigeria in 20 years' time? Is it possible to build? Next week, we'll be back, and I hope you'll all be on the platform. Once again, Feyi, God bless you. Thank you very much, Pastor. And I look forward to this book, and which will tell us a little bit more about Nigeria. God bless you, and God be with all of us in Jesus' name. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen.